Okay, it is April 6, 2025, the week of the Big Bass down here on Lake of the Ozarks. So we're going to give you kind of a fishing report, up-to-date fishing report, but then also, kind of emphasis on the bass, the Big Bass, which is coming up this weekend here on Lake of the Ozarks. So, it's always a great turnout, a lot of payback. This one's for $100,000. $100,000 for the biggest fish. I don't know how many. It'll probably be 2,500, 2,800 anglers, but it's a really neat event and a good chance to win a lot of money. And the amount of paybacks in this particular tournament. It's an amateur only tournament, so obviously there's no professional anglers in it, no guides in it. It's just a really neat format that they've been doing now for I don't know how many years, 10, 12 years probably at least. But there's several paybacks every bi-hourly, and it's just a really neat deal. So we're just going to kind of maybe give you some of our forecasts, what it looks like, what we expected to win, and what baits we would be throwing. If we were able to fish this, what we'd be out there, casting around trying to get that one big fish, or a fish the size to at least cast you a check or two. So obviously this is, on a 5-fish limit tournament. You're out there. You're obviously trying to look for the big fish, but you're fishing for a limit of fish. And a good tournament size fish is 3.5, 3 3/4, 4 pounds. That's a good tournament fish, but in the bass, that's really not going to help you a whole lot. You're looking for 5 to 7.5 pounders. So you're probably going to be fishing some baits that you may not be getting as many bites, but when you do, it's probably going to be a big one. So that's what you kind of got to be. You're a different kind of mindset where I'm okay going out there fishing big bass and catching 2 or 3 fish a day if they're all over 5 pounds or maybe 6 or 7.5. For estimate, I'm going to say it's going to take a 790 to win this. I don't think we'll break 8, but I think we're going to get close to it. There's been several heavy 6s, 7-pounders brought in the last couple of weeks, and we're kind of hitting it just right. We're kind of in between moon phase. We got a new one coming up. There's a bunch of fish that had moved up, and they're staging, and the big females are out there staging. So it's getting real close. There's not going to be any bed fish caught. I say that, and I watch someone bring in a bed fish, and there may be some fish trying. I highly doubt it. I haven't seen the water. The water hasn't been stable enough temperature-wise that I think the fish are going to go in and try to spawn. So they're real close. They're staging. So just, that's kind of how I would approach it, as far as what I'm going to be looking for. So, right now the water temperature is anywhere from, I'm going to say 50 to 58. Yeah. We've dropped down a little bit. We're going to have a cold night tonight. It's supposed to drop down in the 30s. We've had several days of cold rain. So it's cooled that water back down and kind of, I would say, put these fish into check and kind of check them up just a little bit to where they're not going to go in and set up for beds or make any beds yet. We're about 2 weeks away, I would say. Now we are supposed to get some warm weather towards the end of the week, in the 50s and in the high in the 70s. So that's going to start creeping that water back up, getting it a little more stable, getting some of these big fish trying to slide up and maybe start really thinking about it. So the water level, it has come up. It is 656.57. So, we're getting up. We've come up what we say, a foot and a half in a week. So that's going to help the fish feel a little more comfortable and get up shallower when the water's not dropping, which will kind of keep them out. So things are looking good and coming up as far as.
It's good too as far as those. You see a lot of lay downs right now where you're like, a little bit more water would help these lay downs and that be more productive.
Right.
So I think
good point. We've been watching, like she said, a lot of lay downs, shallow brush, a lot of shallow cover. That's been maybe a foot, 18 inches in the water. Well, now that water's come up, a foot and a half. So now we're perfect. It's in 3 foot of water, 4 foot of water, and that's what them big females like to slide up and hang around, lay inside it or alongside these big lay downs or around the shallow brush, and it really makes it easier to target these fish. When they're pre-spawn like this. Right. So as far as baits, one other thing, the river arms, obviously, we got a lot of rain, but most of the rain was on the western southern side of the lake. So I'm talking, up the river, like we'll say Rainy, Pearson, Bollinger, Alcorn, although that side,
45,
and then when you get down to the Big Niangua, the Little Niangua, they all got a lot of rain and they're going to have a lot of runoff. The Big Niangua really got it, so there's a lot of dirty water. If you're looking for dirty water up the Big Niangua, the Little Niangua is also going to be the same way. All that side there. The North Shore is in great shape. The Glaze is probably going to it receives some of that runoff. So up the Glaze is going to be, it's going to have some dirty spots, some dirty water coming in, which also gets some big fish really shallow. So, as far as watercolor and all that, the lower end, mid-lake down the lower end, it's in pretty good shape. I have not seen a whole lot of major change. You're going to have a little bit of runoff and all these creeks and stuff, which you'll get a little bit of that dirty water coming in, but it pretty much dissipates and clears off pretty quick. On that lower end are these more developed portions of the lake or areas of the lake. That runoff's always clean because it's coming off of a developed area compared to the river arms or upriver where a lot of them creeks are and that area is just dirt, mud. It just turns up the dirty water and brings it in. So. But that lower end is going to be still pretty clean. I think the weather forecast is partly cloudy to sunny. We're still a week away, so we don't know. But, it looks like it's going to be a really good weekend, really set up, really good. Coming off of a cold front, these fish have bunched up and they're trying to get up there. So now we're going to be on the backside of a cold front. And on the beginning and middle of a good warming trend, which that's what we need to get these fish really up there, really feeding, and really getting up here where you can catch them. So, as far as baits, it's hard to say, but if I had to pick it, I'll put them in my order as far as what I think it's going to take to win or what bait will win the bash. I hate to say it, but I'm going to. The Alabama rig it's been catching a lot of the big fish here lately. And the way they're going to be setting up, hanging out on main lake points, secondary points, bluff ends, even some of these steeper staging banks, and back in some of these creeks and stuff. You're not going to be able to beat the Alabama rig as far as getting reaction bites and getting the big fish bite. The Alabama rig it draws them up and it will get them to bite. So this is a Flash Mob Junior. You know, I really like that one. It's got the little willows. It's got the, you know, of course, the 5 wires. What are you looking at?
I was just gonna say, they do have the shorter armed ones also,
Mhm.
which you could
More of a
maybe,
finesse
yeah, you could
Alabama rig.
downsize. It's something to think about, because you can always have one person throw maybe the larger
Mhm.
one, and then have somebody else in the boat throw that smaller one. But
Which
it
is
does
kind of
have,
a finessey. I think
yeah.
it's got 3 wires, maybe.
No, I think it's still got 5.
It's still got 5. It's just a smaller profile.
Yeah.
But this is just your standard mount, Flash Mob Junior. It's got 5 swim baits on it. Obviously, the top 2 are dummies, you know, because you only have 3 with hooks. And then bottom 3 have them Crockett Gator swim bait jig heads, which is, in my opinion, the best little swim bait head for these. They're 1/8 ounce. They're wire hooked, so you can swim it, you know, by the cables, swim it down along the bottom, maybe get hung up if you do in brush, around brush. And when you get hung up, you can pull them loose because it'll kind of straighten that hook and you can pull back and bend it back. But, you know, I just keep it really simple. You know, the swim baits on the back of it, I'm throwing a 50-pound braid. I know a lot of guys will throw it on 25-pound fluorocarbon. You know, that's obviously your choice. On a heavy rod and a medium gear ratio, 7-to-1 gear ratio, that's not overly important. But the swim baits, you know, everyone makes a swim bait out there. We talk about it all the time. But like the Reaction Innovation, the Little Dipper, it's a really good one. This one's a Little Dipper. It's called Sexy Shad. It's got a little chartreuse in it. So if you do get into where some of that water's a little bit stained, you know, Netbait makes one. It's called the Little Spanky, you know. But if you look at all these swim baits, or most of them out there, they're all pretty close, you know. So, you know, just get you one. These are little 3.5 to 4.5 little swim baits. That's probably the standard, you know, color wise or size wise. And throw that thing around these steeper banks, staging banks. Are there fish back on pea gravel flats, pea gravel banks, pockets? Yep, I guarantee there are. But the majority of your fish are still hanging on these staging banks, main lake points, windy points, you know, steeper ledgy stuff, steeper big stuff, maybe pea gravel close, but deep water retreat right there. So that's where these fish will hang out there until things are ready. These little males, little buck bass, they'll be up in there, they'll be making beds. You know, you get up in there and catch a lot of them up around pea gravel, up shallow. You know, but them big females,
finding a lot of them about 10 foot out.
Right. But them big females, they're going to hang out there, you know, the majority of them. Like I said, you're likely to catch a 7-pounder in a foot of water right now, and would not be surprised. You know, probably not on the Alabama rig. You know, that's more your staging banks, your big main lake points, like I said. You know, but if you're going back in and you're going to look for maybe a little shallower fish, maybe some around shallow cover, big laydowns, shallow brush. When I say shallow brush, shallow laydowns, 4 foot of water or so, then I'm going to pick a buzz or a spinnerbait. Most likely with a little stained water, I'm going to pick this this E-Factor spinnerbait. This is a little 3/4 ounce. It's got the gold hammered Colorado with the little red trailer Colorado. It's chartreuse and white. Got me a little trailer hook on there. It sends off a lot of vibration. You know, and it's probably one of the most one of the most used spinnerbait colors down here this time of year. You know, obviously I like that one. A little bit of stained water. Shallow. Now if I'm fishing main lake points, what do you got? You kind of got the same one, except she's got the saber tail trailer on there, which is a really good trailer. And that's also made by E-Factor. It's got the good long plastic body, so you can get it on that hook, and then your action of that trail of the tail is out past your main hook, and it also allows you to run that trailer hook on there without interfering, which is really important to have that trailer hook on there. You know, that's the same color spinnerbait. Another one I like, this will be a 3/4 ounce. This is just a custom one I had made. And it's got a bigger willow nickel and then a gold Colorado. And you can see I've got a little swim bait on the back of that, little chartreuse tip on it. I think that's a little Reaction Innovations little swim bait. Same deal, any of them swim baits. You know, it just gives a little more action, a little more buoyancy. And if it's real windy, real sunny, I'm gonna pick that one with the willow for a little more flash over the vibration compared to the big Colorado. You know, this one's I'm gonna be throwing. You can throw this the same place you can throw the Colorado blade in the stained water, but this is a little more clear water. You can see this is more of the kind of a mouse color. It does have a chartreuse and white head, but more of a mouse color for that clear lower end lake where you're gonna have a little bit clear water. The fish are gonna see it a little more. Maybe pick up the flash from the blade a little more.
How about chartreuse blade in the little stain?
Yeah, same deal with the. I don't have one of them out, but like a double willow, like this one here, a double willow, maybe a chartreuse white. I think that's called Ozark Flash. Yeah. You know, everybody makes one of them. Trophy Bass Company had one. I know Reaction or E Factor has one.
Just in that stained
yeah, what's
water,
the other
you
one
might
that
want to.
makes? Anyway, you know, War Eagle makes one. You know, but either way, you know, you can just kind of switch it up, like a double willow, like this is double willow. Same kind of setup here as far as the trailer hook. And I'm just gonna, if it's windy, especially if it's real windy, I'm throwing a spinnerbait. I'd throw a spinnerbait all day long. There's no way you throw a spinnerbait all day long right now on steep staging banks that you're not taking fish in to cash checks right now. I mean, this is the prime spinnerbait time. From now for 2 more weeks, this is the prime spinnerbait time. You can tie on a spinnerbait, start on Main Lake Point, and go all the way to the back of a creek and fish everything between there, and probably catch fish from the point all the way to the back.
How about fishing parallel? Parallel to the bank some.
Yeah, I mean, if you're fishing by yourself, you know, parallel to the bank, these fish will get right up tight to laydowns or right up tight to the rocks on these steeper banks. And obviously, if most of these fish are up tight to the bank and you're casting to the bank, your first 3 foot is your productive area. So like she's saying, if you move up, kind of slide up and throw these spinnerbaits down these steeper banks and run it parallel to where that bait's in the strike zone, the entire cast, you've just increased your odds and your chances a lot. You know, so other baits, your stick baits are still working. She's got that. What's that? What is that though?
Spawn cherry.
Spawn cherry and the plus junior +1. Let me see a drink there, real quick.
Oh, are you thirsty?
Yeah, a little dry there. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is I've got jerkbait on a
jerkbait. Ricardo.
Yep, crown.
Little black crown.
Blackberry crown.
Blackberry crown. Some what was that? Cherry.
Black cherry, and then Dr. Pepper.
Dr. Pepper cherry. So pretty good drink.
Yeah, pretty good. Yeah.
Anyway, so
we're looking at 10-pound test on this. Go as light as you can. I like the +1 because it really, you know, up shallow it gets into them rocks, and then it dives a little bit deeper as you're bringing it back to the boat. I think that seems
definitely, especially if these fish are kind of, you know, we get these cold fronts and that water will cool down pretty rapidly, say from the surface down to maybe 5 or 6 foot, and then fish sometimes will get down in that 6 to 8 foot where that water temperature hasn't been affected by the cold front and quick cool down. And like she said, that +1, it gets down there probably 6 to 8, maybe 9 foot of water, and it'll draw fish up from a little deeper, compared to like this is just a regular Mega Bass 110. I believe this is the Edo Natural. Is that right? I always get Wakasagi. I always get those two mixed up.
And you can always weight them if you need to. If you're looking at where you're seeing majority of the fish, you can lead wire. You can do your suspend dots.
We're kind of almost getting away from having to weight them because these fish are more active and they'll come and they're a little more aggressive. So we're you're not having to let that bait sit near as long. You can pretty much steady work it and try to get a reaction bite to some of these fish that are just out there suspended. So
right, and
if you get up to stay in water again, something with a little chartreuse on it. Let's see, there is a bait.
There's a table.
It's this one right here.
And when I was talking about the suspend strips and all that, that is to get your bait down to where you're seeing those fish, and you can keep it moving. You don't have to have that pause between. So it's reeling. You're taking your slack up. You're twitching. You're keeping it pretty.
Yeah, you're wanting to move your stick bait now. Once the spinner bait's on, you can speed that stick bait up quite a bit. This is another one. This is kind of got that purple, kind of a clear translucent and a chartreuse belly. If it's cloudy, I don't know, when they start feeding or chasing them bluegill, this is a good one. For that. There again, we're throwing it on 10 or 12 pound test, fluorocarbon. That bait, a stick bait, you're going to be able to run it. Actually, any of these baits right now, you can run on main lake points, secondary points, steep channel banks, or back in on these pea gravel. This pea gravel stuff that's maybe 6 foot of water pea gravel alongside these docks, around dock floats, around shallow cover. Some of these big females, they're going to start getting back in there and looking around. And, they're not back there, they're not ready to spawn, but they're back in there soaking up some sun. And there absolutely could be a 7, a big one back on pea gravel. All I'm saying is the majority of them are still going to be staging, wanting to come in. Yeah. But this is a tournament to where you're looking for one fish. So if you go back in there and you fish all day and you only catch one, but he's 6.5, 7.5 pounds, so good, mission accomplished. So other baits, obviously they're still producing good solid fish. And you can cover a lot of water. Is a crankbait. What is that?
Stone cold. Rock crawler, stone cold. We're just seeing, in fact, I don't know, Lake Area Happenings had somebody posting pinchers that were on their dock, and they're like, what is this? So you're talking crawfish right now. You've got sun, you've got your bait that the bass are going after. So definitely their food, their crawfish is great.
The bass are just up there. Like that crankbait would be real good for main lake or secondary flatter point even now, where it's really digging in and them fish are up in there feeding, rooting around for crawfish. It's just a good way to cover a lot of water. And if you don't fish a whole lot, the crankbait's a great choice because you just throw it out there, reel it down until you feel it kind of hitting the bottom, and then just slow it up so it just keeps contact. And just reel that thing in.
You have some versatility with your retrieve until you know exactly how what the bass are, how they're going to respond. You can literally cast it and retrieve it and just reel it in, or you can drag it, you can slow it down, you can really make sure it's getting in those rocks, almost like a Carolina rig kind of dragging, effect. So you do have some versatility, I believe, with your crankbait.
So that's, obviously the crankbait. Another bait for big fish, especially now. Same deal. Looking for pre-spawners is just these big glide baits, and these big glide baits. You can work them a foot underwater, or you can let them sink down and fish them 6, 8, 10 foot of water. This is just that Spro Chad shad. Just the shad color with that little chartreuse on it. Just your same one, and just a bone color. They're just great baits. Throwing them on 17-pound fluorocarbon, 20-pound fluorocarbon. Throw them up to the bank, and just you can either work it steady, start and stop, real quick. 3-4 times, real quick. Get that thing darting, and then slow her down. Let her glide a little bit. It's just a big fish bait. You may not catch a lot of them, but if you catch one on this bait, he's probably going in to the weigh-in. I mean, it's just,
that's a big mouth.
It's just the nature of this bait and what it pulls up. So, this bait here is going to be way up there in my rankings as far as what's going to be able to catch a big fish this time of year. Spawning flats, any of your points, same deal. All these baits are going to be thrown on the exact same type of banks. Those are moving baits, are moving choices.
These are definitely baits that you're moving, covering water and moving.
Yep. So
pretty quick.
Then if it's bright, sunny, pretty calm. You may want to go to the bottom and fish a little slower, and then we're going to go into your Carolina rig. This is Carolina rig time of year. A lot of fish are caught on Carolina rig. A lot of big fish, a lot of pre-spawners. The bass has been won a couple times on Carolina rig. Swamp bug, the big swamp bug. This is a brush hog, Zoom brush hog, the Zoom, I think it's a 6.5-inch lizard. Any of those baits, and the Carolina rig, you just got it rigged with a 3/4 ounce. That is a brass, and then I got a glass rattle bead on there, and then I got my swivel on there, and then I got, you can see 2.5, 3 foot of a leader, number 5. Wide gap hook, and then this is a full-size brush hog, green pumpkin, red flake, and I would chartreuse up the legs on the back there, those the tentacles, whatever you want to call it here. I'd chartreuse that up so when them are turning, you got that chartreuse effect, and that's an extremely good bait. That's going to be thrown on little still points, maybe a little more pea gravel mix. A little smaller rock, maybe baseball, softball size with a pea gravel mix is where I'm going to throw this. Bluff pockets, smaller pockets, little spawning pockets, close to spawning pockets. And I'm going to throw this in, 6 to 12 foot of water right now for all those big pre-spawn fish. Usually, throw that on a heavier main line. This is 17. And then I'll throw it on 12 or 14, usually monofilament. I kind of want that not to really sink fast. I kind of want it to float and be a little more buoyant. My leader will be a fluorocarbon or a monofilament, like I said, 12 or 14 pound test. And that one you're just going to throw it up to the bank, let her sink down, and you just drag. You just pull it up. Your length of your hook set position, I guess you'd call it, up. Once you get it there, you stop it, you reel it back up, and you drag it again. And you let that weight just hit, bounce the rocks, stir up dust, stir up, commotion. And then you've got this brush hog, lizard, sweet beaver, any kind of little plastic trailer. And then it's coming back here. So you got this weight stirring up stuff, making noise, gets the bass attention, and then you got this bait back here 2.5 foot come around. The fish come up to investigate, the bait's there. A lot of fish are caught on Carolina rig this time of year. Excellent bait. Another bait, it's super easy to throw. You throw it out there, let it hit the bottom, and you pull it along until something pulls back. It's that simple. You'll feel a tick, but they usually pick it up, and you'll feel them pulling, tugging, and you really rear back and give it a good hook set. Obviously the jig, I never would count the jig out for catching a 2-pounder or catching an 8-pounder. The jig will do it.
Right.
What do you got there? That's a little.
This is a 1/2 ounce, and I have it. My trailer is Bait Caves Cave Crawl.
Yep.
You can't beat this, but I will tell you, fishing around the docks and you have to feel comfortable doing that. You have to kind of make sure that the wind is not going to be too tough for you to fish around the docks. Excuse me. If you feel comfortable flipping the docks and doing that, I would definitely encourage you to
definitely get in there and flip around some docks, shallow docks that are sitting in, say, 4 foot of water, 5 foot of water over pea gravel mix. Big fish this time of year, these big females, they're notorious for getting underneath that foam and getting right underneath that foam in 4 or 5 foot of water, and you flip that jig up there on them corners, and as it's sinking, it's almost like a September bite. That thing sinks just below that foam, and them fish will run out and grab it. Great way to catch some big fish right now underneath these catwalks. If them fish do decide to move up shallow, it's a great way to catch some fish. You will catch a lot of males, up in there, them 14.5 to 17-inch fish, so you're talking, 1.75 pounds to 3 pounders. You'll catch a lot more of those this time of year, but I would not, underestimate it as far as being able to catch you a big one, because it definitely will catch you a big fish, so those
targeting maybe some shade. If you have a sunny, if there's a sunny day, you're going to want to target the shade, underneath the catwalks, right at that area where you just literally have the shade.
Right.
That's where they'll go and flip in there and
it's real similar to a shallow brush pile or a lay down or something. They'll lay underneath these catwalk, the shadows, or like I said, the shallow docks inside them foam holes. Just inside there where they're still getting maybe if the water's a little breezy and it's kind of rolling, a lot of sun, they get that warmth, but they're still just inside that shade. They're still going to use it kind of an ambush point of that little bit of shade. So, that's in a nutshell, that would be our choices. I'm going to probably, put the Alabama rig spinnerbait right there together. The stick bait, the glide bait's going to be way up there as far as big fish. But then, on the bottoms, your Carolina rig and your jigs definitely can catch them. One other bait